Talk. But my name is Steve Parks. I'm a professor at Syracuse University, which I guess is where we're having the Fed Fest today. And about 15 years ago, by happen chance, I found out about the Federation of Worker Writers. And I remember thinking at the time, and just to put on my professor hat, that this was one of the most significant working class writing projects of the 20th century. That as an organization, tens and tens of thousands of books were published and distributed across the UK, France, Europe, Middle East, into America. Publications which aren't only good writing and good history, but also literally track the lives of everyday folks from about 1970 onwards, in a way that no other writing project has been able to do. There have been oral history projects, but a self-generated, written by the folks themselves type set of publications just didn't exist. And I remember one day I was saying to Nick, so where can I go to read all these great publications? And he goes, well, there really isn't a central place, because each of the writing groups have them, and there's storage places here and there. And that kind of put the idea in our head that what we really needed was one central location where all of these books could be stored. Because if they're in people's houses, they might get lost. If they're in people's basements, they might get moldy. If they're in storage units, they might get sold because the storage unit bill comes down. And this whole history, this whole 40 to 50 year history of working class writing was going to be lost. So working with Nick and Jess and with the Federation and all the different iterations of the board, of which Roy has been a huge help, I should just say, we managed to sort of begin the process of collecting. At this point, we have about 1,000 to 2,000 books. We actually have closer to 5, but there's a lot of sort of duplicates. And we're in the process now. They're now at London Metropolitan University. And Jess is going to talk a little bit about how we put the archive together, because it was important to us that when the books came into the university system, they didn't just reflect the university values. They reflected the values of the Fed. And we've done a lot to make sure that current and former members get a strong say in how the materials are being used. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Jess. Look, I'm like a talk show.
So I just wrote this up here, so anyone who wants to see the name. So the Federation of Worker Writers and Community Publishers started in 1976. People like Sally were involved. And now, Roger. And we have a lot of members here who were part of this older Fed, and then now call it the Fed as well. So if for anyone new here, and especially Syracuse students, there are two kind of iterations of the Fed, but we're thinking about all of these publications. And they're currently at London Metropolitan University as part of the Trade Union Congress Library. The wonderful thing about London Metropolitan University is that it's a public institution, and anyone can go into the Trade Union Congress Library to look at this material. So it's openly accessible to every single person here. And that's one of the main reasons it was decided that that would be a good place to hold all the material. This is Nick Pollard. Many of you know him as a Fed member. And then Jeff Howard on the right-hand side. And this is Nick, who has created or given the most substantial number of donations. We're talking thousands of books that Nick's had in his garage.
Much to his wife's anger. So there's a historical and personal motivation.
And so this is where we started. So the first image that was on the slideshow was kind of the first step of going through these books. This is ultimately people like Roger, Lucy Parker, who's not here today, Dave Chambers. Multiple people from the Fed have helped organize and sort these books, as well as Syracuse University members. And so what you're seeing here is the books being sorted by regions. Now the reason this happened was because 3 years ago, Steve, myself, Nick, Ashley, Dave Chambers, Sally, Roy, Lucia, I think Louise, many people kind of came together and we had a workshop thinking about how do we want to put these publications in some sort of order for people to use them. And what multiple people voted on was that it should be based on regions. So we separated it into regions, and then in order to get more categories, we separated them by publishers or by individuals, depending on if they didn't have a publisher, and by writing group. And so that's what you see here. There's a lot of sticky notes throughout. And so this is part of the sorting that that multiple people have been part of. This is just a closer image. Now what's included in the archive is publications, minutes from the AGM meetings. We have flyers, broadsheets.
Some recordings, right?
Some recordings, some magazines, some journals. We have documents that people have written individually and submitted. So there's a lot of stuff to go through, but this is kind of in-progress images. Now what's happened, and I'm really proud of this, and thanks to kind of a lot of people here, what's been happening is on the right-hand side you have the in-progress stage. On the left are archival boxes where these have been fully sorted by region, by publisher, by individual. They've been indexed, so it says who published it, certain themes that it discusses. Maybe it's immigration, maybe it's working class life. We tried to pull out individual kind of themes from each book, and so that's the start of the actual publication archival process. So anyone who goes into London Metropolitan University, the library can look up on their database. It's very low here, but you can see the Federation of Worker Writers and Community Publishers. You can pull that up, and it will show an index of everything that's been indexed so far. We're nowhere near completed, but you can start to see how this is forming. And in that index, there's over 1,000 individual publications indexed already.
So that project preserves the book, and if you can afford to get to London, it gives you access to the book. But one of the things that I think is most valuable about Fed Publications is they spoke to the local community, to the local streets that people lived on and coursed about in their day. So the next stage of this project is to begin to digitize the books and then put them online for free. So that if you're living in Sheffield and there's a book about Sheffield in the Fed Archive, you can still get the book. And we're in the process of figuring that out now, and I think Jess will talk about copyright in a second. And then the third stage of this is we'd like to use augmented reality software so that if you're going down Sheffield and you see a certain type of symbol and you point your phone at it, it'll automatically download that book that was writing about that house in Sheffield. And so what we'd like to do is think about how the wonderful history you all have produced can become a living history in the communities in which next generations are growing up and facing stuff. For that to happen, a very important piece of work has to occur. Do you want me to say it or you say it? I'll say it. So one of the great things about the Fed is that everybody retained copyright of their work. One of the horrible things about the Fed is everybody retained copyright. Because now we are unable to digitize anything that the editor of a collection or the author of the book doesn't sign off saying we can digitize. We're looking into other strategies, like maybe the Fed is an organization, or maybe there's some kink in the law that we can get. But basically, we're now on an author hunt. We're looking for people who are in the Fed, whose books are now in here, and we're trying to find them and say, can we digitize your book? So what we were hoping is, while you're listening to celebratory writing, or while you're sitting listening here, if you have published stuff in the Fed, if you would sign this form, that would give us the right to digitize it. You would still own copyright in case you want to sell it for a Hollywood movie. It would just mean that people who can't afford to get to London would be able to access and read your book in PDF form. So you would still own copyright, you were just simply letting us digitize it.
I should say, to add on to that, one of the hopes that the new Fed Executive Committee has, as well as London Metropolitan University, as well as Syracuse, one of the hopes is to actually get this material used by people, to get them to the archive, to get people to read this, to write more, to join the new Fed, and to really actually make this continue on, not just sit in a library for...
Some people already are using it, right?
Yes.
We teach the Fed at Syracuse University in multiple departments.
Jeff has also said that the WEA has started thinking about teaching classes, coming to the archive using the materials, so the Workers' Educational Association. There's different community organizations that have heard about it and are interested. There's other people interested in community organizing. So it really is starting to be used. Lucy Parker, I know, wants to produce different films based on it. There's people who want to use the materials in different ways. But in order to kind of branch that out, aside from London, that I think the best way is to have it accessible online. And so the digitizing is a really important part. So I can pass these around. If you have any questions.
I just pitched the book real quick.
Yeah.
So while she's passing this around, let me just pitch one last thing, and then we want to answer any questions or concerns you might have. And I wish Nick was here because he has a much firmer sense of the history than I do. But you might have noticed that there were flyers saying transitions, and there were sort of writing prompts that people could fill out. About 8 years ago, my press, Newsgate Community Press, published a book where Federation members from across Britain, American writers sort of in Syracuse and Philadelphia, took up the theme of education, and we published a book that had this dialogue between these multiple folks talking about the goals of education. That book has been used in different classrooms in the United States. We're trying that project again, and this time the theme is transitions. So if you have any piece of writing you've done today that you would like to appear in the book that will be both in America and in the UK, feel free to come up, hand it to me. I'll take a photograph of it so you can take it home, and I'll just maybe have you sign it so I know I have permission to publish it. If you have anything at your house, you're like, wish I had this, you can just email me. I'll give you my card, or there's some flyers where my email are at. Love to get it. And we're looking for artwork, drawings, poetry, nonfiction, whatever you wish to hand in. The idea is to create sort of this transcontinental, thank you, dialogue about what it means to have transitions in your life. So I hope you'll submit. So with that, do you guys have questions? We don't know what to do. We're not sure what to do now.
Roy, is there anything you'd like to say about the archive from the Fed's perspective?
Oh, from what I can see of it, it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I know it's a long way from being finished, but what you've done is absolutely amazingly, wonderfully brilliant. And thank you, all of you who've been working on it. You know, this organisation has wanted this project for so long, and we really thought it would never happen. We couldn't get our heads around the way to do it, and then you came along, and hey-ho, we're well on the way, and thank you.
We've had a lot of help, Roger and Dave and people who have come to the meetings, and there's been a lot of people along the way.
Questions? There and there. Okay.
There's a lot of stuff going on now through the writing challenge, which is online. Is that going to be part of the archive? That's part one of the question.
Yeah. I don't see any reason why it couldn't be part of the archive, but we've been focusing so much on the print materials that we haven't been able to expand our lens. But certainly what we're looking for is not just an archive of the past, but the archive as it continues to grow.
Right.
We'll have to think about copyright again, like the fact that it's online, maybe we can just have a link on the archive page to it or something. Yeah, that's a tricky one, but yes, absolutely.
And the second part of the question is that a number of us might have put stuff in anthologies, which are local group generated. Is that part of the archive, and do you need copyright permission for that?
Many times, anthologies, so for instance, we have Newham Writers Anthologies, we have Stevenage Survivors, that individual members might sign off on their copyright, in which case we could digitize something by Andrew Diamond, but we would not be able to digitize the entire anthology until we get approval from every single person in there.
Yeah. We're looking into seeing if the editor of the collection authorizes it, if that'll work. Because usually if you submit to an editor, you give some control of the editor. But we're having to hire lawyers at this point to try to figure this out. It's great fun. It's interesting. Yeah, no issue with that. I'm excited. I'm sorry. Go ahead, and then Roger.
No, but actually, Andrew's kind of raised partly the point I was going to make, because I mean, I've had individual pieces in quite a few different. I mean, I think it was in the Fed, some of the old Fed magazines on the spreadsheet, and also in some of the Shoreditch Writers magazines.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wouldn't have any problem at all with you digitising my content, but obviously, reading the form, I can't give you permission to, because then I don't know. And with my particular writing group, I don't think really there was ever anybody that was. It was basically a Shorelink publication. There wasn't really any editor as such. It was just that one of the members at the time collated the stuff, put it together. Somebody else helped to produce it, and once we produced it, we sold it or whatever to spread word about the group. So trying to get definitive copyright from any one person, I think, is...
It would be helpful still, though, if you're okay with your section, that form will allow us to publish just your... I mean, it will take a lot more work, you know, digitizing one page, and then we'll note, for instance, on the website, maybe it says Tony May, and then it says you can see the entire publication at London Metropolitan. But if you sign that form, it will still give us the opportunity to publish your individual writing, and it won't be speaking for anyone else.
Roger, then Sally. And then
just by the way, I'd like to back up what Roy said. 100%. This is such a fantastic project. No, I was just thinking, and I mentioned it earlier in the break. I was sent through a list of seemingly thousands of writers saying, "Can you identify any of these people?"
I'm about to pass that list out.
That's a killer. But about a fifth of the people I was looking at are all dead. So I don't know what happens to the copyright in that circumstance.
In the US, it's 70 years after the date of their death. And I don't know what it is in the UK.
Well, if they haven't signed it on, I think that you could use it.
I'm sorry?
If they haven't signed it on to anyone, then it would belong to the Fed, wouldn't it?
That's the issue we got to look into, whether the fact these were Fed member groups doesn't mean the Fed can allow its members to look at the materials online, and then we would just put a password up, something like free books, that, you know, people could just log on and look at. But that's where we need a lawyer. We're at that stage.
Over the years, I've sent stuff into the old Fed magazine. I've left 3 old copies.
I saw those.
Right, if you're very welcome to take them with you. I don't know if you've got them at all. Can I give you a generality of copyright? Because I can't recollect the when and where of what I sent. So can I give you a generality of copyright that just says anything that you find with my name or amongst Fed material, you can have the copyright.
And anybody who wishes to empty out their basements or attics can submit more archival material. Because there was at one point there was over 120 groups who were members of the Fed, and I don't think we have 120 writing groups represented. So feel free.
I was going to say, in the beginning, before we did this book, we used to do pamphlets. Do you remember, Roger?
Yes.
And I was wondering if anybody had given you any of those. That was in the beginning.
We have Voices, and we have the Fed News and the Federation
but
magazine.
not the pamphlet.
Not the pamphlet.
I suspect
Anna might have some.
Yeah, I suspect in some cases things have just been lost over the years.
Well, I know.
Which is tragic.
I've got some rubbish put away. I wouldn't be able to find them.
Oh,
Later.
I've rummaged through your rubbish.
Well,
And it's not complete yet. We haven't sorted through everything, so it could still be in boxes.
One of the things that comes to mind is Newham Writers. We've got a website, and currently they've just started a new website under WordPress, and Steve's doing that. But I look after the old one, and it looks old because it's still written in the old HTML. HTML. So, there's three full anthologies there. It's 97, 98, 99, and I suggested publishing because I was doing the work, doing the website, and said okay, and I published them 1 year late. So they went in the 97, went up in 98, and we had donated books to Newham libraries, so that the copyright was established. And so anybody wanted to argue with us, argue with the library, but. We stopped doing that in 2000 because about 3 or 4 of the members got got sort of scared that somebody in California might steal their story and make $1 million out of it, you know. Whatever. So no, I said good luck to them. But no, it's so we didn't publish anymore, and I sort of half-heartedly said, can I put the work up on well, this latest Stave has got stuff up on this latest one, and that's what it's basically doing it for. It's much more modern. It comes up PDF and all this.
Okay.
So it's another take on it, and it's quite good. And I'm glad he's doing it. Glad he's doing it. The thing is that those three that are already up there, they are up there.
Yeah.
So you can have them. Even if it's if you wanted to say, put a link to them because and not sort of because it says on there the copyright stays with the author. But they're public.
Great. We just got a small grant to build a mock-up of the digital resource page.
Yes.
And so one thing was linking to any group that has a link. So people can just go right to the site. But yeah, that would be great.
Well, you can, if you wanted to link directly to the
Exactly. Exactly. And hopefully also drive traffic to see all the stuff you guys are
Yes.
doing currently.
Yeah.
Other questions? Sorry, go ahead.
If you give me the links, I'll put them on our website.
Okay.
And also, with the writing challenges, every month we say that they may be used in future Fed anthologies. So by submitting, people are
Okay.
agreeing to that. So I think in that instance, the copyright issue is okay.
Okay, brilliant. That's a brilliant.
And we're on our 90th challenge, so that's 90 months worth of creative writing to a theme over since 2009. February
Wow.
2009 we started.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
What's this month's theme?
Off the top of my head.
Steve, I hate to break up this
Nope,
beautiful
I was just about to break it up because it's 4:30.
It's 25 to, I believe, now, so I'm told.
Okay, can I say one last thing? So I have been telling my students about the celebration of writing since I started to recruit them to come to the class. So I'm really hoping everybody takes a moment and reads, because I've been raving about your work. So please, 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 please read a lot of your stuff. That's all I'm going to say.